All right. Good evening. Thanks for joining us out here this evening. We've got an allotted time frame of 6 to 7, but certainly we can stay around for additional questions and things if folks have any. We're meeting tonight to talk about the North Padre Island Seawall. I think probably everybody in here is familiar with the seawall. It's been in existence for 50 plus years. It's been around for a long time. It's had some major damage on a couple different instances. So we're trying to, we've got an idea of how to move forward with getting some significant improvements made to it. Not only shoring up its current deficiencies it has, but also maybe adding some improvements to it. So we've got some experts here that are going to run through a PowerPoint presentation, and we'll open it up at the end for question and answers. There is a YouTube live broadcast of this, and so I do have a link, so if someone wants to come find me after I sit down here in a second, I can share that link with anybody else that you think might want to listen in. I think Dale may have also just posted it on the Island Moon website. So anyways, with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our mayor, Paulette Guajardo, to say a few words.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, and I will say just a couple of words in regards to this project and really about your voice and the importance of this seawall. You all probably know and remember here just recently we sealed up and we're able to say we got it done in terms of the Packery Channel and the damage that the hurricane did to that channel. To that whole area. And so this is similar. We want to find a way to invest, right, and maintain. That's extremely important to us. This whole issue is extremely important to find a way how do we do that and work together in collaboration to do that, right? Because it's important. So your councilman's constantly, as y'all all know, very, very invested and very communicative with me and the city manager in terms of everything that's going on, Flower Bluff and the island. So again, I just wanted to be here because I recognize this is a very important issue for our island and the community as a whole. So thank you for having me, and thank you for taking the time to be here, because again, your voice matters, and that's the whole point to a town hall. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Can y'all hear me okay? Before I get started, let me ask somebody real quick. How do I flip the slides? Chloe? Are y'all doing that? Okay. I'll just tell you next. Okay. Let me make a few introductions. I'm Jeff Edmonds. I'm the Director of Engineering with the city. I've got a few staff people that I'd like to introduce. We've got City Manager Peter Zanoni and my boss, Assistant City Manager Neiman Young. We also have another Assistant City Manager, Heather Hurlbert, and she kind of gets doubled, has two areas of responsibility on this. She oversees the TERS, which is funding this project, and also Parks and Rec, which is probably going to ultimately be responsible for this. Let's see, I've got two staff members of mine that I think you're going to interact with a lot. We've got Bobby Hared in the back corner. He's our land agent. And we've got Brian Carter, who is going to be our project manager in engineering and developing the bid documents. And we've already selected our consulting engineer, and we're in the process of scoping and negotiation with them on this project. And that's Hanson. And we've got John Michael and Craig Thompson from Hanson in the back row. Raise your hands, guys. Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, this is what I'm going to go over tonight. This is a preliminary meeting. We're just starting this. I know we started getting a lot of questions because we sent out letters telling you that we're doing surveying out there and so forth. And so we thought it would be better rather than meet individually with the different groups, different property owners associations to have one meeting and try to get as many people at once as possible. We recognize a lot of the folks are not here local. There's a lot of owners of these units that live elsewhere, so that's why we're doing a live stream. And it's also going to be recorded, and so people will be able to access and view that at any time. So this is my outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the seawall, where we are currently, talk a little bit about the FEMA Public Assistance Program, which is going to have some interaction with what we're doing and what we're wanting to achieve as the desired future state. And there's some necessary legal actions. I'm going to get our attorney, Janet Whitehead, who's in this corner. She's going to go over that aspect and then just kind of briefly tell you what to expect going forward. So next slide. Okay, this is a timeline of kind of the development of Padre Island and how the seawall fits into that. The Padre Island Investment Corporation started in the mid-'60s and announced that they were going to build a hotel out there. That became the $1 Million Inn, which is no longer there. The first plat was recorded in 1967, and the protective covenants were first passed in '67, and they've been amended multiple times since then. The seawall construction started in 1968, and they built pretty much the current configuration, which is about 4,000 feet long, and then they were planning on extending that to the north and south. It was actually going to go north all the way to Zahn Road and south about another 1,000 feet, and state of Texas got a court order to halt that construction. And then there was litigation between the state of Texas and Padre Island Investment Corporation, and there was a settlement on that. The city really didn't come into play in a big way until 1981 when the city annexed this area. Let's see, another thing I want to call attention to. In 1995, in an effort to help clear up some of the title to the real estate out here, there was legislation that was passed. They amended the Natural Resources Code to help better define the property lines out there. 2011, you actually put a name on this. I think we're probably going to start referring it to its official name, the Michael J. Ellis Seawall, and the beach is named after him as well. Then last year, there was a project that was approved in the CIP by the City Council to invest $15 million that's coming from the TERS in making upgrades to the seawall. So next. So I'm going to say a little bit more about some of the key points. So the seawall was privately built as part of the land development, but the problem is the land that was built on was claimed by the state of Texas under Open Beaches Act, state submerged land, all of that. The state sued for trespass, and there was a judgment that was reached in 1974. And that judgment granted permanent access to the beach and the seawall to the public. And there were also some tracts of land that the developer had to deed to the state. 1980, Hurricane Allen caused significant damage to the seawall, and the adjoining property owners created a seawall committee to fund the repairs. As I mentioned, in 1981, the city annexed. The 1995 legislation, it reiterated the public easement that's required as Texas open beaches, and it established that the vegetation line, since there wasn't really a vegetation line, would be the face of the seawall. And in exchange for doing this, they required the construction of a public parking lot and easements to access the beach on either end. And the city helped to facilitate that, but that was a requirement that was imposed by the state of Texas. So, next slide. Okay, this is a graphic that illustrates the land that was ceded to the state of Texas by Padre Island Investment Corporation as a result of that 1974 judgment. All the hatched area, yes, sir. All the gray area is land that the state received as a part of this settlement. And up there on the right end, that's where Packery Channel is, if you want to orient yourself on that.
What was the purpose of ceding the property?
Well, so basically the state was saying that the developer was trespassing on state-owned property. And that was the dispute. And as part of the settlement, they basically ceded some property that the state claimed to the developer. In exchange, the developer had to deed this property to the state. So,
Jeff, just to be clear, this is where Factory Channel goes through now, right?
correct.
It comes right, basically.
Right through there, yes, sir. And so that land is all claimed by the General Land Office, administered by the General Land Office now. So, next slide. So this is what the seawall looked like in the 1970s, and you can tell from the cars in that photo that's kind of dated, but that's Island House, which was one of the first construction projects out there, and then that picture in the lower left, that next building going north is the $1 Million Inn, that of course is no longer there, but that's an aerial image from the 70s, and John Michael, he was pointing out that this image, which I'm not sure the exact date, but it is the 70s, but you can see that the Packard Channel was open at that time. That wasn't the Packard Channel that we built, that was just the natural water exchange that existed. So next slide. These are some images from today, and I think everybody's familiar with it. You know, you get lots of people out there. It is a focal point for tourists as well as local people that like to go to this portion of the beach for recreation, and people just walk up and down the seawall. Right, next slide. I mentioned Hurricane Allen in 1980 did extensive damage to the seawall. And my understanding is that they formed a seawall committee and collected funds from the adjoining property owners to effect repairs from that. Next slide. Okay, so currently the seawall is privately owned and maintained. Now, even though the public has unfettered access to this, it is not a public asset. It is a private asset, and the settlement agreement with the state prevents any kind of restriction of public access. It needs a lot of work. There's a lot of maintenance deficiencies. I've heard from some of the folks that it's difficult to impossible to get insurance on this. Now, I mentioned FEMA public assistance, so I think most of y'all probably realize that we're using somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million of FEMA public assistance in the restoration of Packard Channel to correct the Hurricane Harvey damage. Currently, this seawall is not eligible for any of that. So I think it's uninsured, and it's not eligible for FEMA PA. If you were to have a Hurricane Allen this year, I think you'd be back in the same situation that you were in 1980, and it would be a private responsibility to fix that. Next slide. Okay, a little bit about FEMA PA, which unfortunately I know way more about this than I'd like to know. So the FEMA PA program provides federal grant assistance for restoration of disaster damaged public facilities. The authorities and limitations are defined in federal statute, something called the Stafford Act. There's 4 basic components of FEMA PA eligibility. You have to be an eligible applicant, eligible facility, it has to be eligible work, and eligible cost. So to be an eligible applicant, if you're a political subdivision, that usually checks that box. Now there are some nonprofit entities that can be eligible. It's a little bit of a high bar, and it is very restrictive, but being a political subdivision is usually the easiest way to qualify for FEMA public assistance. So in order to increase the likelihood that future seawall disaster repairs would be eligible for FEMA PA, the city needs to legally assume responsibility for its maintenance. So that's one of the aspects of this. You know, if we're going to go and invest $15 million of public money in this, we would like to be in a position that we could pursue FEMA public assistance in the event that there is disaster damage. Another wrinkle in this, and we've actually fought this with Packard Channel, is we want to avoid this being classified as a flood control work, and that's a Army Corps of Engineers definition, and believe it or not, they tried to claim the Packery Channel was a flood control work. And it took us about a year of fighting with them to get the Corps to back down on that. And then it reopened FEMA PA, which allowed us to get started on that restoration project. So next slide. Okay, now this is what we're proposing to do with this project. And again, we're at the preliminary stages, so I don't have a lot of details about the construction, the features, that kind of thing. But we have $15 million that was approved in the CIP. We need the real estate rights to be able to do this work and to maintain it going forward. We also need to be legally responsible for the maintenance and repair in order to be PA eligible. And that's probably going to take some council action to help cement that. We're going to be seeking an easement dedication to allow us to do this work and to maintain it going forward. And if we do this, the owners are no longer going to be at risk for any damage or upkeep or claims, which I think would be a big benefit to anybody that's fronting on the seawall. Next slide.
Jeff, the 15 million is kind of the ultimate budget.
That's what's in the FY24 CIP.
Right, but that's enough to do what we want to do to improve, to stabilize and amenity beautify it.
That's what we've estimated to correct the current condition deficiencies and to put some minor amenities in there as well.
Right. Okay. So it's fully funded.
It is funded. Now, it's not all in this current fiscal year, but over the 3-year period, it totaled to $15 million. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over to Janet Whitehead, and she's going to talk a little bit about the legal aspects of this.
Hello, Janet Whitehead, Assistant City Attorney. So we have contacted the Padre Isles Property Owners Association. Under the protective covenants for the subdivision, they are named as the trustee, and right now the POA has the right, title, and interest to repair and maintain the seawall to prevent potential FEMA issues of concurrent jurisdiction and that the city does not have ownership of the seawall. We have requested a deed from the POA to transfer their rights, title, and interest to the city. We have also asked the POA to coordinate getting an amendment number 3 to the protective covenants, and what that does is it deletes the Article 6 seawall maintenance agreement from the protective covenants. So there's no longer any responsibilities on the subdivision, the property owners, or the POA for the seawall. We have sent a request for easements to each property owner, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more today is what it will do, the easement. We have done a survey of the easement. So it's a 40-foot permanent easement, and it's actually a good thing because it details the exact location of that vegetation line that has been set by the Texas legislature in 1996. So that line is the line of vegetation. So if the seawall is damaged and it has to be rebuilt, it will be rebuilt back within that easement that you grant to us. We are also asking for a maintenance easement. So in addition to the 40-foot for the seawall itself, we've asked for 20 feet on each side of the easement for access, construction, lay down during the repairs and maintenance and improvements to the seawall. I understand that there may be some of the properties might not have 20 feet, so we will work on that 20-foot easement on your property side. 20 feet on the other side, the 40-foot easement, and then it may vary on your actual property side as far as the access easement. When all of that is done, then we can go to council and we can ask them to assume legal responsibility for maintaining and repairing and improving the seawall. And that'll be the last action. It'll go into a file, so if something happens, we have it for FEMA to show that the city has ownership and jurisdiction. Yes?
It's a 40-foot basically for the entire construction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the two 20-foot easements, are they temporary construction?
They're right. So it's during times of construction or improvements or access where we need to repair or maintain structures.
Okay, so they're in perpetuity, but only access when the construction's in?
Correct.
Maybe some type of maintenance we have to access?
Yes, sir. Next.
Okay, well, so the next steps, we'll be in touch with each of the owners to discuss the details about the real estate requirements. We're going to be negotiating a design contract and taking that to council. And Hanson is the firm that's selected. And assuming we reach agreement on this and get this approved by council, they're going to be producing the bid documents for this work. Now, I anticipate there's going to be numerous stakeholder meetings where we're coming out to the community and sharing with you these plans, getting your feedback on them as those bid documents are developing. Once that's completed, we advertise that for construction bids, and that's probably going to happen sometime next year. And then the construction is probably going to take 12 to 18 months. And we think this renovated seawall is going to be even more of a focal point and a more popular destination on the island. Next, and so that concludes our prepared remarks, and I'd like to open it up for any questions that anybody has here, and anybody that's viewing remotely. If you submit those questions through chat, we'll give our best shot at trying to answer them here. And that's my contact information there. If you want to email me any questions or comments, I will take that as well. So if you have a question that you'd like to ask here, if you raise your hand, I'll bring you the mic. Oh.
Hi, my name is Grex, and I work for Gulfstream Condominiums. During the construction period, how would our tourists be impacted moving forward with this plan?
Well, so I can give you a general answer. Of course, all of our construction impacts adjoining owners, you know, whether we're doing a road construction or any kind of work we do, whether it's at parks, American Bank Center, we have to balance the need to do the construction and to give the contractor room to work with the needs of the community. So I can tell you we do everything we can to try and minimize that impact and try and work around any kind of special events or things like that. So
Gulfstream being one of 4 properties on the Gulffront side could be immensely impacted. I think that's worrisome, and so if we could get some clarification how that would play out, that would be great.
Well, so we will be sharing that as we develop it. And I would say, of course, you were just impacted by the beach nourishment, for example.
Right.
You know, there's going to be impacts, but this is linear. So when I say 12 to 18 months, that doesn't mean you're going to be impacted for 12 to 18 months. That means for the contractor to go from one end to the other is going to be 12 to 18 months. So that window where they're impacting your individual property is going to be much less than that.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'll let you go first. Oh, he's coming. He's coming. Sorry.
Can you, excuse me, just give a general idea of what you're calling maintenance work? So the steps are in pretty bad shape. So you're going to replace the steps completely, put a layer over the top. Is the top deck going to get replaced? And then maybe, you know, what are you thinking about as some of the attributes that you might add to it?
Well, off the cuff, we're talking about completely putting new slab over all the existing concrete. So that was preliminary. That was based on the preliminary engineering report. In terms of amenities, we're not talking anything major, but we're thinking lighting, some seating, maybe some shade structures. And we're going to have to coordinate that with the owners, obviously. I know there's probably a lot of concern about the view. We'd have to pick locations for things so it's not going to interfere in any way with your use of your property.
Jeff, there was a
we will have multiple dates, multiple workshops for public engagement during the design development. So we will have situations kind of like this where we can unveil details about the design as we progress.
Matthew Connolly, can you talk about how you're going about acquiring the property rights? Is it purely voluntary, or are you doing it under threat of eminent domain?
Well, so I'm kind of a recommender. That's kind of my role in the organization. Now, I'm not recommending using any eminent domain on this. You know, it's not, how do I put this? If I'm building a road next to your house to do a highway or something like that, it's going to negatively impact you. Sometimes those kind of things are eminent domain. I can tell you, if I owned one of these condos and the city came to me and said, look, I want to relieve you of this liability here, both for the maintenance of it, the potential restoration of it, and liability for just slip and fall, people, the public, you know, you've got the general public, you can't stop them from going, and if they fall, they might sue you. If we own it and we're responsible for maintenance, they sue us. So if I were the owner, you wouldn't need to try and condemn me. I would be, you know, where do I sign? But, so when I say I'm a recommender, you know, this project can be killed. I mean, you know, it is in the approved CIP. My job is trying to get it done. But I think, you know, if it becomes a real obstacle to get this done and get the real estate worked out, I hate to say it, my recommendation would probably be, hey, maybe we can take this money and find another project to do.
My name is Trey Wattinger. I've got really 3 questions for you. A follow-up to this gentleman's question over here. Would the city provide temporary ingress and egress along the seawall while the construction is going on? Because I believe your question was, how do we access the beach? I mean, the people that come and rent these units are obviously wanting to go to the beach.
Well, and I think we're going to have to do that. I don't know how, I think we would have legal problems if we did not do that.
Yeah.
So, yes,
Well,
we will try and figure that out.
I would suggest you put it in the bid documents.
Oh, no, it'll be very clearly defined what exactly, there'll be detailed drawings on what they need to do, what they need to provide. Yes, sir, that will be part of it.
You showed us a map there, and that the state controls some of that land. It's my understanding that all owners have to agree to this for the thing to happen. Would that include the state?
Well, we're going to have to do some permitting with the state, yes, sir. And I don't anticipate that's going to be a problem, but we have to get, like, for example, we had to get permission from GLO to do the work we just did on Packard Channel, and also the beach nourishment. We had to get their concurrence on that. So,
if they own property on the seawall, would they not have to agree to it?
We're going to have to get their concurrence, yes, sir.
Okay. Last question, and kind of the most important one to me. I own a few units at the Island House. You know, this line of vegetation, so to speak, and it moves back. Could the city guarantee the property owners along the seawall in writing that their original footprint could be maintained regardless of the line of vegetation and any setback laws?
Well,
whether it's a catastrophe and a hurricane or whether it's just a desire to rebuild.
Well, so I'm going to take a stab at that. This is kind of a legal question, but so I'm a little bit out of my lane. I'm the engineer, but so my answer is, you know, in this hypothetical, I can't tell you what would happen. Okay, I can tell you what the city's position would be. The city's position would be the face of that seawall is the vegetation line, and that's what the legislation from 1996 said. And I don't think there's anything that we're proposing to do that would in any way compromise that. In other words, you're not going to be any worse off with what we're proposing. You're probably going to be better off because we're taking responsibility for the seawall, and this will be the city fighting that battle with the state, at least for the seawall.
But isn't the line of vegetation moving back 20 feet?
No. I think it's face seawall. I mean, it's not, no. No, it's not based on that easement.
All I'm asking is, can we rebuild on the existing footprint, and will the city grant the property owners that in a written form?
Well, I don't know that we can guarantee that. So the city's probably not going to prevent you. If somebody were to prevent you, it'd be the state. You follow what I'm saying? So there's no way that we can indemnify you against some potential hypothetical state action on that. But I can say that, one, it's going to be better maintained. Two, if it is damaged, the city is committed to correct the damage. Well, let me let the lawyer act.
Yes, like Jeff says, whether or not we take over maintenance and responsibility for the seawall or we don't, it's not going to impact whether or not you can rebuild after a hurricane. That's a completely separate issue. Yes, that's a completely separate issue. Whether or not we own it or you own it, you're still going to have to deal with development services on rebuilding it. I did talk to development services, and they said that yes, there are exceptions under the Chapter 10 of the City Code for the properties adjacent to the seawall. So you might want to talk to them about that question.
I think that's a major point in property
Well, so I would just say this shouldn't change that in any way, shape, or form. And it would probably benefit it due to the fact that now that the city has maintained the seawall.
Maintenance is all good. I'm talking about the future. Our property's 50 years old. It's withstand some pretty good storms, but time takes its toll. And let's fast forward 25 years from now, and let's say a major hurricane comes through and wipes out the island house in the Gulf Stream. Can they rebuild where they were?
The only thing that I think would interfere with that would be the state's claim of this rolling easement. So you're probably asking a question that would maybe need to be litigated to get an answer to. But I can say fairly confidently, I do not think what we're proposing is going to affect that one way or the other.
Can the city approach the state on this? I think that they could vet the state a lot easier than an individual property owner.
All right, and that's what the 1996 legislation was. So it sets that line. There's no rolling easement anymore. The line of vegetation is the seawall. We are going to work with, if the seawall is gone, it completely goes away, we are going to work to rebuild it. And that's what we're saying, is that's why we wanted to get FEMA eligible, so that we could work to rebuild it. Whether or not your property can be rebuilt in the same exact footprint, I don't see why it would not be working with development services. However, the state has rules, and that's what Jeff is trying to say. The state has rules that even we have to abide by. And so in 25 years, if this happens, I guess we'll work together to see how we can resolve the issue. We want Island House there. I mean, it is a good, tourists come to Corpus Christi, they stay there, they access the beach. We want them there, so we would work together to help that. But I don't think any of us are going to be here in 25 years, so.
So if that were to happen, I think you might imagine a situation of Island House and City of Corpus Christi versus State of Texas.
Could you elaborate a little bit on the current responsibilities of the POA for maintenance and rebuilding of the seawall? What is their, I'm reading the Article 3, what does that require the POA to do?
Actually, the amendment number 1 to the protective covenants established the Seawall Committee, and it established the Seawall Maintenance Fund. So the POA is actually supposed to be collecting an assessment every month from the seawall property owners that's managed by the Seawall Committee. The Seawall Committee determines what, they actually are supposed to, the Seawall Committee assesses it, determines what needs are, what needs maintenance, what needs repairs, do a report to the POA. The POA, as a group, they're supposed to vote to make these repairs, and then the Seawall Committee writes the check, basically. That's how it's supposed to work. So, we're asking, I understand the Seawall Committee has complete authority over the seawall and what gets done and what doesn't get done. And so this conveyance that we're asking for from the POA, I'm assuming the POA will submit it to the committee for a vote, and then they will go back to the POA for a final vote. It's designed that way. Yes. Yes.
We got a question right here. Do you know who's on the Seawall Committee?
I don't know. I do know each property owner has a one representative, and so that's okay.
My understanding is they have exactly $0.
I can, having been on the POA board for a number of years, attest that the Seawall Committee has never given any money to the POA as trustee, so there's not a whole lot of work to be done without any money. So it never fulfilled its mission.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do is just uncloud any of this title that could present some problems in the future if we don't do that.
So who is paying for the current? The Vincent concrete work, a little bit of woodwork on the.
Not us. Yeah, I wouldn't say that hadn't been. It wouldn't surprise me if they had, but I would say we're probably getting out of our maintenance responsibility when we do that.
So there was a comment made, you said as well. Sure. I heard a comment earlier about the easement being temporary. My understanding it is not temporary, that it would be a permanent grant. It would be during a time whenever construction or something would take place, that it would be the city to be able to use that easement. So again, it's a permanent, it again might be used temporarily for whatever that is, but it's a permanent grant to the city to be able to have that, correct?
That's correct. But this is pretty typical. I mean, for example, if you're doing a development and you put in a sewer line that's going to be dedicated to the city, we get like a 40-foot easement on that sewer line, so we can go in there and maintain that sewer line if we need to. So it's fairly typical to have an easement over infrastructure that you maintain.
And so that easement has been asked to be provided by the individual property owners themselves, correct? So because the property owners are the one that own that particular piece of property, and they also have their responsibility for what's on the seawall in front of their property as well, correct? The seawall, the 40-foot section that you're talking about, like
Right.
let's say in front of Gulfstream or in front of Island House, that's owned by that particular property owner, correct?
Right, yeah, you'll still be the fee simple owner of the property. We'll have a permanent easement for where the seawall itself is, and then the 20 feet.
And that was on Jeff's slide number 6 of the bullet that said no fee simple as far as that particular property. So I guess when I was looking at your slide, at the top one, it said where the PIPOA to grant as the trustee this property.
The actual seawall itself, the improvement.
Yeah, so, but the seawall, as been said, I understood, actually belongs to those property owners themselves.
No, the seawall is a common element of the subdivision. Just like the canals are common elements, it doesn't belong to one property owner. The seawall is exactly the same. It's an improvement. And so it's like personal property, it's like, here's my shoe kind of thing.
And I guess that's what's confusing, because I thought I heard Jeff and you say both as well, is that seawall, if there's an injury or something, the people that are on that property are responsible for that because, again, that's their seawall.
Well, they own, right now, yeah, exactly. So it does,
Right.
He said that you could be sued. He didn't say that you could prevail, that person would prevail against you.
I didn't say that.
That's a complete judgment whether or not, those are complex legal issues.
And the issue is that we seem to have two entities with interest, the PIPOA and the individual property owners that have that responsibility associated with that seawall that's in front of them.
And that's why we're asking for both entities to give it to us. so that you don't, there's no confusion.
It seemed to be a little difficult in the understanding because there was just a section about the easement coming from the property owners, and there seemed to be a part in the PIPOA that number one on the slide and saying you were going to be getting them to provide the change to the deed and those things, when the deed actually also involves those property owners.
Right. So if you look, there's I can't remember where it is, but it talks about the 6 feet below and 6 feet above. There's actually, anyway, so the improvement, the seawall itself is an improvement. And so it's the protective covenants where it talks about the common elements. It talks about the trustee having the right duty and responsibility for the seawall structure itself. And that's what they're asking them to convey to us. Not any kind of fee simple or any property interest, but all of their rights, duties, and responsibilities for the seawall. That's what they're going to be conveying. We're mimicking exactly the language in the amendment number 1. Yeah.
There seemed to be, as you said, there seems to be some confusion about where this responsibility begins and ends, simply because, again, PIPOA can't give away what belongs to those property owners.
Right, but as a trustee, they can give their rights, responsibilities, and duties under the protective covenants for the seawall. They can convey that.
They can convey that
right,
part,
and that's
their
what,
rights
that's all
and
we're asking them to
responsibilities.
convey to us.
But with regards to the property owners themselves, as you said, as Jeff said, we would hope that those property owners would realize the benefit in giving up or deeding or giving that particular piece of property over to the city. But again, it's going to take 2 to tango on this, correct?
Correct, yes.
Because my understanding as well is that doing a property search on the particular like Gulfstream or Island House, it's a little unclear where some of this actually ends up.
Right, and actually it's 3 because the other thing is 51% of the subdivision, so this is not just the seawall property owners, but additional subdivision have to sign to amend the covenants.
And that's why, again, it seemed to be broken up in 2 different sections on the presentation. And as you said, the property owners, it was unclear there where their role was. But I think, as you're saying, there's going to have to be more that we meet on to be able to discuss, because it's not clear, it's not bulleted the way you can on this PowerPoint presentation. I'm just providing an observation, that's all.
Right, so this is like Jeff said at the beginning, introductory town hall. We will be meeting individually with property owners to discuss the easements and to discuss all of this personally, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and please feel free to let us know if we've got anything wrong, because this is a really complicated puzzle, and we've been reviewing tons of documents that in some cases are 50 years old to try and piece this together.
Randy Bales. Just curious, is there a design issue of why you're not pushing the easement to the opposite side, to the Gulf side, so that you don't impact the landowners? I mean, they've already got a build line documented, obviously, from the grass line or whatever. You know that you're going to have 40 feet of easement to start with. You're passing it off that it's another 20 feet. Oh, it's just temporary, but you know that's going to be a build line. They're not going to be able to build anything inside that 20-foot easement. So essentially, the landowner's going to give up another 20 feet. So now they're at 60 feet. Is there a design reason we can't go 40 feet where we're currently at, plus 20 feet and 20 feet toward the Gulf?
I'm not following exactly what
so you're backing up 20
from
feet
the back of the wall. You're saying it's going to impinge on.
Yes, you're going from the back of the wall now toward the property owners. You're going to impede on them another 20 feet with this temporary easement, correct?
Well, when we say temporary, the maintenance easement,
it's a maintenance easement, but the bottom line is they're not going to be able to build anything in there. So they're giving up 20 more feet.
Well, they're not necessarily giving it up. There are things they can do, but there are things they can't do. I mean, for example, they can't build
So my question is,
a building on top of that would interfere with our ability to maintain the seawall.
so they can't build where they would normally build. That's the bottom line. I don't want to go back and forth with this. Is there a design reason why we can't build it forward toward the Gulf side? Move the whole thing. Listen, you're going to redo it anyway. You said you're going to redo the concrete But top
Well,
down,
we're
correct?
building it on top of the existing seawall, so we're not demolishing what's there. So what's there is going to be in the exact same place. It's just going to have.
And we can't do that from the Gulf side without impeding on the landowners.
Well, I think it'll be very difficult to not get beyond the seawall to some degree.
Okay.
Just from, and then getting access to it.
Okay.
I think we need to talk about it. I mean, if somebody's got some plans that this is going to conflict with, we need to talk about it. But, you know, the idea when we get public infrastructure, we try to ensure that we've got adequate easement to be able to do whatever needs to be done to maintain it.
Sure. Thank you.
And we are the property owner on the seawall. Some of our property line goes past the seawall into the beach area. So what this gentleman was saying, that we will lose like not only 40 foot, but part of the land that we have on the beach. So what he was saying, if any way they can work, then we can put the property, currently we are trying to develop a hotel, and I was talking to Peter, and I had showed him a drawing. So it will be, a lot of land will be gone, so we like to keep, as
Well, part of the answer, and here again, you got a dumb engineer that's giving you his legal answer, but if you think you got property in front of the seawall, I think you're kidding yourself.
No, that is true.
I think the state's going to claim it. I mean, this is back to what happened back in the 70s. They thought they owned it. They built the seawall on it, and the state came in and said, hey, you're trespassing on state-owned land, and there was litigation over it, and the state prevailed. So that's where I'm coming from with that comment. You might have a deed, you might have a survey. They had that too. They thought it was theirs. The state says no, the state.
We don't have any problem, but, we are currently our design that we are doing right now, we're going to use as much as land as possible because, we are,
Right, and as I said, we're going to meet individually with each property owner, so we'll review those and,
Sure.
and we'll work on those access. So
Okay.
we'll work on that part.
Can you tell us, you may have said it, but how many individual property owners do we have to negotiate with for the easement rights? And you need 100% concurrence, am I correct, to be able to do what we want to do?
Well, so Bobby's telling me it's 16, and of course the problem is that some of those property owners are these condominiums where you've got multiple owners. Every unit has a different owner, and they've got an HOA or something that we're dealing with. So they're going to have, each one might have a different process where they've got to take a vote and have a majority of their owners agree to this. So some of them are individuals like this where there's one person that owns it and it's either developed or undeveloped, but
What's the estimate then, given there's multiple units? Just a guesstimate or estimate.
what,
If you figure all the units.
oh, how many, including all those?
300 and some, isn't it?
That sounds about right.
300 and some, I think.
365. That's what the last estimate was. There's been some
Okay.
that have been joined together that have become doubles opposed to singles. And that's one of the things that I think I heard from Bobby's group or whatever it was, how many there were come out of that. Just whatever that was.
Okay.
And it doesn't, as individual property owner there, it's a different story.
Yeah, so if you add them all up, más o menos 365. Okay, now we've got some remote questions that we're going to take.
Okay, this is a question from the live chat from Patsy Mitchison. Why can't we grant the city a long-term lease instead of conveying title?
Well, my response to that, it's theoretically there's not a problem. The Packard Channel is in a 99-year lease with the General Land Office, but again, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of the property owner, the city obviously is not going to commit to maintaining this beyond the term of that lease. So do you want a 99-year commitment to maintain this and then it reverts back to the individual property owners? I'm not sure that, I would prefer to just give the permanent easement if I were in that situation, in exchange for maintenance in perpetuity.
Okay, Patsy had another question. What guarantees do the owners have that if the seawall is destroyed, it will be rebuilt?
Well, I think the guarantee is under what we're proposing, where it becomes city responsibility, is much greater than if you've got individual property owners out there. One may put the money in and rebuild it, and the next one not. And I'm sure they face a lot of obstacles when they repaired the island damage. Now, like whether it's a road, bridge, or any other infrastructure that the city's responsible for, you know, I'm not aware of an instance where something was damaged and we wouldn't come in and maintain it. But if you're wanting a guarantee, I'm not sure. I think the guarantee is going to be this council action where we pass this resolution that takes maintenance responsibility for this.
Next question from Jason Page. When assuming this risk, what benefit is it to non-Seawall citizens of Corpus Christi who reside outside of 78418?
Well, I think the benefit is that there's people that come to the Michael J. Ellis Beach and Seawall from all over the city and all over the world, actually. And this is going to help to maintain this as an attraction and a valuable part of the community. So I think it doesn't just benefit the owners that front. I think it benefits all the people that go down there and enjoy the beach and the seawall from in town and that come here as tourists.
Those are the only questions on the live chat.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any questions you'd like to ask here? Again, you jot down my contact info, or I've got some business cards I can give you. Feel free to reach out to me individually. And that, I'm going to let Dan. Oh.
One last one. Just want to go ahead and say that there seemed to be some confusion in providing this announcement of this to take place. I heard from some city staff members they had a difficult time in trying to get this on the city's website so that it would be made available. I was aware by some property owners that they were unable to find this, and literally only because through, however you want to call it, the grapevine, they heard about it. I would just ask that there be, for the next series of meetings that come out, the same way that we have other meetings that are publicized on the city's website, they'd be brought there as well, Jeff. Absolutely.
We'll try and do a better job. And my apologies to people that got the incorrect address and went to the wrong place. And, you know, if there's anybody that's affected by that, we're going to get this posted on the web and we're going to share around the location. So please feel free to share that with anybody you know that missed the opportunity to be here in person. Oh, we've got one more. It's going to start, I think we're going to be having those discussions starting now, and that's going to be going on throughout the design period. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're not still engaging with property owners and finalizing this stuff a year from now. But we typically want to have all that nailed down before we do any kind of construction.
We have meetings in the end of April and May, and if we want all of our owners to be voting and agreeing to this to give you the permission, grant you the access, we'll need the timeline to be able to get those people together. You need to set a year out. So if we, you know, as of April, the end of April, we don't have a concrete understanding of what's going on to present to our owners, and do we have a timeline that says, hey, we have to have these conveyances given by this amount of time?
Like I said, I was saying a year, Massimano, so we're estimating that this design process is probably going to take a year, and we typically have like 30% drawings, 60%, 90%, and we're going to be having workshops and sharing those with all the owners. And the drop dead, we would really like to have all of these things nailed down before we actually award a construction contract and start construction.
Thanks for coming out tonight. I would like to say that I appreciate Jeff and everybody putting this together. To your point about getting the information out, I know that wrong address went out on that one But I shared it, I think, last week several times. I know it was on the city website. It got shared on social media. So, but like Jeff said, we'll do a better job on getting the future engagements out there, hopefully earlier. We know this is a heavy lift to answer all these questions. There's a lot going on, like Jeff said. As to time frame that the last gentleman asked, I would say that timing is of the essence. I give credit to Peter and Heather and the leadership in the city, seeing this as being a very important project for the island and for our community. And we have these resources activated, and we're gaining traction on this right now. I can't say, what the leadership looks like 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now if we don't do this now, what it looks like down the road. So I think this is a great opportunity for the city to step up, and the TERS and specifically to have allocated this money for this effort. So hopefully we can continue to answer questions and gain traction and do this sooner than later. So thanks for coming.